Kia ora students, here we are ready for the second how to plan your essay. I did the first one about the character question, and now I'm going to talk about the turning points question. So if you're still really stuck about how to plan your essay, then this is the video for you, but if you're feeling really confident, well then there's no need to watch. Okay, so just like with the other video, I've got the work that I did when I interpreted what the essay question is actually asking of us. So remember, this one we're talking about the turning point, and we've decided the turning point is when we realise Andy cannot read. Okay, so freeze that screen now if you need to write that down, but it was in our previous video about interpreting the question. So that's all pretty straightforward, and it's exactly like the last video where I planned the other essay. Okay, so the next slide is all about how to actually work out what you're going to say in your essay. Okay, so it looks exactly the same as the previous video, really clear event that is a turning point, and explain how the director used those verbal and visual features to show that the turning point was important. Right, and we reworded it to say the most important turning point was when we realised Andy can't read. We're going to talk about dialogue, facial expressions, sound, close-up. I think I only talked about 3 of those, but that's okay. Right, so again, we've got our paragraphs 1, 2, 3, and we've got our point and example over here. So in paragraph 1, if I were to write this essay, I would say the sound effects show how important that turning point is when we realise that Andy can't read. And the example I've got there is the sound of leather on leather from the strap. Okay, so that sound when the principal gets the strap out of the drawer and then kind of stretches it in his hand, that leather on leather sound is really ominous and scary, especially to any adult who, like if some of your parents are like 50 plus, which probably a lot of your parents aren't, maybe even some of your grandparents would remember that noise from when they were at school, and some of them may have even had the strap, and so that sound is just really hinting at what's about to come, which is this extremely painful experience for Andy. So part of a turning point is that the director has to get us really engaged, otherwise we don't really care. So suddenly with that sound, we're just like really worried that Andy's going to have to go through this terribly painful experience and he doesn't deserve it. So then that leads us into the next point, which is how facial expressions show that the turning point is really important. And we see Andy's face screwed up in expectation and then confusion. So he's like fully waiting to bear the brunt of this pain with his hand outstretched. And then the principal slaps it down on the desk and he's really confused. He's like, what is this man doing? Like, clearly Andy's not the brightest spark, he can't read, and so he doesn't quite work out just yet what's going on, but we're certainly intrigued as well. So this is really like the turning part of the point where we're like, okay, so we think we know what's going on, but it hasn't quite been confirmed to us yet, and Andy seems confused and the principal seems to be being very sneaky. So what's going on here? Okay. And then the final paragraph that I've got is the close-ups. And of course, it's the reveal of the 2 notes that is key here. The first note before the strapping that says, will you come to my birthday party? And then the second note that the friend reads to Andy after the strapping, which is actually the one about climbing up on the roof. And that is when the penny drops, when we realise that Andy can't read. And like I said with the plan before, we need to come to that point where we say, well look, it's not actually Andy's fault that he's so angry. And you would say the same thing in this essay. This turning point is so important because it helps us to realise that Andy is actually the victim here. He's not some horrible, nasty little boy who gets angry at everybody for no reason. He's actually incredibly frustrated and sad. So this is key here. Why is the turning point important? Now, you don't specifically, it doesn't actually state that you must talk about why it's important. It actually just says that you have to say that the turning point is important. But if you can talk about why it's important, the fact that this turning point gives us real insight into his character because we realise that he can't read, and then we can feel sorry for him, or we can feel empathy if we've ever been able to if we've ever struggled to do something like me and making videos, then we can talk about how the director has made it important because we realise all of that about his character. And that's why it's so important that we realise that he can't read. And so that is why it is the turning point. It's where everything gets turned around and we see what life is really like for Andy. Okay, so that is our second essay plan for the turning point question. So I strongly advise you, and I have been forgetting to say this, you should be pausing, rewinding, rewatching parts and taking notes. Remember, you can simply pause the screen right now and just write down everything in front of you. Doesn't mean that you're going to end up writing exactly the same essay as me, especially because most of you will never write an essay on $6.50 Man, but it does mean that when you come to write your own essays, you can look at the process. Okay, so pause, rewind, rewatch, take notes. If you don't do that, if you're just sitting here passively watching, you're wasting your time and mine. Okay, so do those things and actually make the most of it. Thanks, guys.